We have two major methods that we'll talk about when we talk about factoring. The first is what we're going to call AC or master product method, and then we'll talk about slide method in just a minute. When I talk about AC or master product method, this is a strategy for factoring that takes into consideration the A value and the C value. So for this particular problem, my A value, since I don't see it, would be 1. My B is -2, and my value of C is -8. As we're working through this method of factoring, our first step always is to check for a greatest common factor, check for a GCF. So if I look at my A, B, and C values, they don't have a greatest common factor other than 1. So I don't have a GCF to pull out of those numbers. If I look at the rest of my problem, if every term had an X as part of it, I can factor that out as a GCF, but again, I don't have that here. So no GCF other than 1. So we have checked for a GCF, and there isn't anything that we need to factor out. My next step is to multiply my value of A by my value of C. So 1 times -8. That would give me -8. And then what we're going to do is find factors of A times C that add to B. If my leading coefficient, my value of A is 1, then this is very similar to our factoring review that we did, or the first page of our factoring problems. This method, however, works even if your value of A is not 1. So we're going to work through with some A values of 1 and then some A values that are not 1 to see how this method works for both. So factors of A times C that add to B. So I want factors of -8, so that would be -1 times 8, or 1 times -8, -2 times 4, or 2 times -4. And then I'm going to circle the factors that add to our B value, which is -2. So that would be these last factors I have here. What I'm going to do with these factors now is to write my polynomial in 4 terms by splitting up that middle term. So essentially what we're doing is we're going back to that first problem and saying, what were the like terms that I combined to be able to get that middle term? Okay, what like terms did I have? That's what we're finding here, and that's how we're going to rewrite this problem. So what I have is x squared plus 2x minus 4x, right? My like terms that I combine, I split up my middle term into those two, minus 8. And then we're going to factor this expression by grouping. Remember, 4 terms means we want to factor by grouping. So x squared plus 2x minus 4x minus 8. Split this up into my groups of 2 and look for a GCF for each group. So my GCF for this first group would be x. When I factor out an x, I'm left with x plus 2. My GCF for the second group would be a -4. Since they're both negative, I'm going to go ahead and pull up -4, leaving me with x plus 2. Remember, anytime I factor by grouping, that stuff I get in parentheses should be the same because now that's my new GCF. So my common factor here would be x plus 2, since it's a factor of each of these terms. And then remaining, I would have x minus 4. So there's my factored trinomial.